Hello and welcome to the program. I'm Teniola Shoboale. We begin in Kenya, where a state funeral has been held for former President Mwai Kibaki, who died a week ago at the age of 90. Several African presidents and other global dignitaries were in attendance, including South Africa's President Cyril Ramaphosa and Salva Kiir of South Sudan. The event was held at the Nyayo National Stadium in the capital, Nairobi. Kenyans have been queuing to pay their last respects to the late president for the past several days, viewing his body at Parliament, where it lay in state. VOA's Mohammed Yusuf is in Nairobi, Kenya. He joins us now for more on this. Mohammed, what's the mood like in the country as Kenyans bid farewell to former President Kibaki? We're hearing there's a public holiday to allow Kenyans to mourn.
Yes, indeed. There is a public holiday today, and Kenyans have the opportunity to come to the National Stadium to give their last respect to the late President Mwai Kibaki. But more importantly, the President Kenyatta led the ceremony, which was held in central Nairobi. It's sort of Kenyans are celebrating, but also mourning. They're celebrating because they believe he was the best president they ever had in Kenya. He performed well during his tenure. Of course, there were some challenges, but he did his best to transform the country. There's that also part of celebration, but also mourning that maybe there will be no one like him, because many Kenyans believe he was an economist, and being an economist, he was able to lead the country in terms of economic reforms, and they believe maybe there is no one economic leader they will ever have again. There's also that bit of mourning because of what kind of a leader he was and how he helped the country and many people in the country.
And speak to us about some of the other major highlights from the state funeral today and the prominent figures in attendance.
Yeah, today in Kenya, there were some African leaders who joined Kenya to mourn their president. More importantly, of course, the South African president was present. Cyril Ramaphosa was in the country also to give his last respect. But there were many issues, many things were said about the president, and more importantly, Kenya were looking at how he transform the economic system of the country and also building the country, and the way he picked up the country when bringing an end to 4 decades of one-party rule. And of course, when the economic country was not doing so well, the political freedoms were not good, he picked up the country at that time and he transformed the country. Those issues that were raised on how he built the infrastructure. But also, they were at also a certain point, Raila Odinga, who had an issue with the late president back in 2007, when he said that he accused the late president of rigging the vote, which led to post-election violence, killing and dying of 1,100 people. He sort of also gave, many people remember the violence and the disputes the presidential vote, but Odinga also gave the mediation process and how Kibaki came in and they were able to come together. And Kibaki said, I think we need to move forward and lead the country together. And how many people are trying to push him and not to agree a deal with Odinga, but he gave a picture that he was willing to compromise and work with him. And that is an interesting thing to look at. Many Kenyans may not remember that aspect of how the violence ended and the country was able to move forward and have a unity government.
And Mohammed, just on a final note before I let you go, when and where will the former president be buried?
The burial will take place in his rural town, Mary, Othaya, to be precise, in central Kenya, and that will take place tomorrow. And of course, people from his village, his town, will also have opportunity to give their last respect. And also, to remember what kind of a sign they gave to Kenya back in 2002 to 2013. And I'm sure in many ways people back there in central Kenya in his village, they're really proud of him. And tomorrow will be his burial day. And of course, there will be other ceremonies that will be taking place in the village in central Kenya.
All right, then, viewers, Mohammed Yusuf, thank you so much for joining us on the program. And elsewhere in East Africa, the Ethiopian government has denied claims of the announcement of the withdrawal of the Tigrayan forces. Government spokesperson Legesse Tulu says news that Tigrayan forces had left Afar were big lies. On Monday, the Tigrayan forces had said they were withdrawing so that humanitarian convoys could enter. Only a trickle of aid has made it into famine-hit Tigray, where more than 90% of the population needs food aid since the Ethiopian military withdrew at the end of June. Meanwhile, malnourished children are flooding into hospitals in the Ethiopian city of Gode as the worst drought for 40 years has forced many families to leave their homes to search for aid. According to the United Nations World Food Programme, the Horn of Africa region is facing the driest conditions in more than 4 decades after 3 consecutive rainy seasons failed.
At a pediatric ward in Gode, mothers cradle their malnourished children. The hospital in Ethiopia's Somali region has seen an increasing influx of starving kids, victims of the worst drought to hit the country in 40 years. Pediatrician Mohammed Amin says numbers started to spike around 5 months ago.
There is an increase in number, and there is, due to the increase in number and due to the droughts which are available in our area, are some of the causes we are seeing. And even we consider that there is in one family there are 2 or 3 children coming together.
Amin says they've treated 140 malnourished children and that 4 have died. On Tuesday, April 26, the UN's aid chief Martin Griffiths warned that close to 2 million children are at risk of starving to death in the Horn of Africa region. Many families like Nima Mohammed's have left their home to seek aid. She's staying in a camp and says adults go without food so that the children can eat once a day.
I have 9 children. I had a home and property just like everyone. I'm 9 months pregnant, and if I give birth tonight, this is where I'll be sleeping. Things are tough here. This is where we live, 11 people, and we're in this situation because of the drought.
More than 10,000 people are getting aid in the Somali region. The World Food Programme says 7.2 million across Ethiopia are food insecure, an increase of 2 million over the last 2 months.
With 7.2 million people food insecure in Ethiopia, this has already increased by 2 million people over the last 2 months. And we're looking at millions more falling into a severe, deep hunger crisis. We know that over a quarter of children are suffering malnourishment, and over a third of pregnant and breastfeeding women are severely malnourished because of this drought. So it's essential that we get nutritionally fortified foods to them right now before it's too late.
The WFP says the Horn of Africa is facing its driest conditions in more than 4 decades. That's after 3 consecutive rainy seasons failed. The organization says 15 million people need food aid across the region, a figure that could rise to 20 million by the end of the year.
And some updates from the COVID-19 pandemic now. Officials in South Africa say the country may be entering a 5th wave earlier than expected. South Africa, which has recorded the most coronavirus cases and deaths on the African continent, only exited a 4th wave around January this year. A 5th wave had been predicted to start in May or June. The World Health Organization's Africa office has flagged the rise in South Africa's infections as the main driver of an uptick on the continent.
This week, new COVID-19 cases and deaths on the continent increased for the first time after a decline of more than 2 months for cases and 1 month for deaths. To date, Africa has recorded more than 11 million cases and almost close to 250,000 deaths. This uptick is largely associated with the increase in the number of cases reported from South Africa as the country enters its winter season when respiratory illnesses become more prevalent. Just in the last week, the country's cases have doubled, and there's a small increase in hospitalizations. Although the Omicron variant continues to mutate, there is no current evidence to suggest that this new upsurge is linked to any new sublineages or a new variant. But this shows that people must remain vigilant and continue to adhere to public health and safety measures such as wearing a mask, washing hands, and social distancing.
Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has made a fresh request to address African Union heads of state. AU Commission Chairperson Moussa Faki Mohamed says he received the request during a call with Ukraine's foreign minister. According to him, the pair also talked about President Zelensky's wish to develop closer ties with the AU. Mr. Faki has not indicated whether the request would be granted, but says he insisted on the need for a peaceful solution to the conflict with Russia. Meanwhile, the IMF says it sees a challenging economic outlook for Africa due to the war in Ukraine and lingering impact of the COVID-19 pandemic, but there are reasons to be optimistic as well. IMF Africa Director Abe Selassie says higher fuel costs and the prospect of a smaller than usual wheat harvest in Ukraine are key drivers of inflation. The IMF also warns that this could lead to social unrest.
In 2020. At the start of 2022, and even a little after, in this third year of the pandemic, it looked like sub-Saharan African countries were beginning to recover from the very difficult economic conditions they had encountered in 2020 and 2021. Unfortunately, most countries in the region are now facing a major setback. Indeed, over the last couple of months, we have increased our inflation projections significantly, lifting the regional average for 2022 by a full 4 percentage points, which represents the worst inflation reading in the region since 2008. But most importantly, high food prices have increased food security concerns across the continent and will hurt all segments of the population. This is a new shock, and this shock requires incremental financing and not just, reallocating support that was already committed. So I think the international community can help by coming forward with robust concessional financing. I do want to emphasize that, yes, it was a very difficult policy environment, but, it is a region which has been very, very resilient. It's resilience that's been tested time and again, unfortunately, in recent years. But I do remain very optimistic about the medium and long-term growth potential of our countries. It's just making sure that we come through this period.
Thanks for staying with us and welcome to our Africa Tech segment. Mwai Kibaki and his team at the Deaf Technology Foundation in Jos Plateau State here in Nigeria are giving deaf children in the community an opportunity to be equipped with tech skills. At the training center, the children are taught programming and robotics, and by doing this, Mwai is hoping to increase the representation of the deaf community in STEM fields.
It is within this environment that Mwai Kibaki and his team are providing young deaf kids an opportunity to be equipped with relevant tech skills. Founded in 2017, the Deaf Technology Foundation is located in the northern region of Jos Plateau State, and children with hearing impairments from the ages of 5 to 19 years are given a chance to be trained in programming and robotics. The children come to the center ready to hone and show off their skills. One of the numerous projects they've created is this smart home.
Yeah, We try to make an automated house so that we'll show the world what the deaf can do. Yeah, so we automated the gate as well so that you don't have to get off the gate to get off your car and open the gate.
At the Technical Center, training is free and it's aimed at driving diversity and inclusion by building an ecosystem of young, deaf software engineers and STEM experts that will give back to their community.
The only course they are allowed to study in Nigerian universities is special education. And it's unfair. And when we are talking, it's an untapped potential, talent pool. And so for us, it's like, let's explore this talent and see what they can bring to the table. The technology industry in Nigeria is booming. Everywhere you go, you have places where you go and learn. But where will the deaf child who also wants to be part of this learn the skill? That is a big problem.
Some deaf children often suffer discrimination in school and are unable to study their courses of choice, especially those that are science-related, either due to lack of hearing aids, few inclusive schools, or just because they're deaf or hard of hearing. Wuni is hoping to change the narrative that science is not for the hearing impaired.
The first school we went to, we had a program before we started our weekly programs. That's the first time they're touching computers in their lives. They're in Jos, but everybody, no, don't touch that computer, you know? And as we went on, they began to own it because school is not only for education for them, is a place of socialization, because there they will find people like them and they can communicate.
The trainings trigger and stimulate the creativity of the kids. It equips them with problem-solving skills, critical thinking, and teamwork.
Also on Africa Tech, the Central African Republic has become the first African country to approve Bitcoin as a legal tender and the second in the world to do so. A bill governing the use of cryptocurrency was adopted unanimously by Parliament last week. Despite rich reserves of gold and diamonds, Central African Republic is one of the world's poorest and least developed countries and has been gripped by rebel violence for years. While the move has been criticized by some who see the adoption of Bitcoin as an attempt to undermine the country's currency. Well, joining us virtually to discuss this is Obinna Uno, founder of the Crypto Bootcamp. Thank you so much for joining us on the program.
Thank you so much for having me on the program.
So what do you make of this adoption of Bitcoin by the Central African Republic?
Well, I think that the adoption of Bitcoin by the Central African Republic, it's a good move in the right direction, but we'll need proper implementations and having the right infrastructures and technical know-how on ground to support that move. Because if you look around, you know that we are currently in a global digital economy. And one of the things that has been introduced for us in this global digital economy is the ability to transfer value and payments electronically. And then, of course, you can have ownership of the value transmission without having any third party intercept this value transmission. And that gives a lot of trust, you know, and that is where cryptocurrency comes in. But then the value that cryptocurrency is creating is that it tackles some economic issues, things like inflation, things like the double spend, things like economic development, you know, wealth creation is one of the things that you could use cryptocurrency as a tool for. And if you look at the Central African Republic, you find out that the Central African Republic is ranked among the top 10 poorest countries in the world. all right, and its economy has been ravaged by years of civil war. They have had series of civil war, and they have one currently, which has been around since 2012. And so you see that they have suffered a lot of economic damage. And what I see them trying to do with the adoption of cryptocurrency, basically Bitcoin as a legal tender, is an aim or an attempt at economic recovery, where they can easily build the value of their currency because of over-dependence on the dollar. All right, so Bitcoin is a better edge against inflation. But my concern is this. In a country where internet penetration is less than 20%, and we all know that for you to be able to utilize cryptocurrency, you need access to the internet, which is one of the major arguments for financial inclusion, because cryptocurrency is going to help solve financial inclusion. But this financial inclusion that is going to help to solve is when the available infrastructures can support the system massively. So if you do not have the necessary infrastructures to support the system massively, then you may not get to the overall goal for this adoption. So this is where my greatest concern lies. One is the level of internet penetration in the Central African Republic. All right, so if there is no internet penetration in the Central African Republic to aid these transactions via cryptocurrency, using it as a means of payment for products and services, you know, for it to even aid economic recovery, then there is already a fault. Secondly, also, is the level of awareness. Are the people properly educated about Bitcoin and cryptocurrency? Do they know what it is? Do they know how it works? Because I have been observing and following the story since it was released, and I found that from response from a majority of the citizenry that has been interviewed or talked to about crypto, they have no idea what it is. So where you have majority of the people who know what cryptocurrency is in the capital. And the capital is just one city in the country. So if it's going to have a very deep penetration into the economy for it to aid the aim for which the government decided to adopt Bitcoin as a legal tender, then there has to be massive awareness and education. The people must know what cryptocurrency is. They must know what Bitcoin is. They must know how it operates, because it is not physical cash that you could just hold in your hands and you say, oh, this is 100 francs, and this is 1,000 francs, this is 10 francs. And
yeah, let me just quickly ask this. I mean, you've listed all the positives, and the move by the country is coming nearly 8 months after El Salvador as well announced this. Should we be expecting more of similar moves by countries in Africa?
Well, I would say not just country in Africa, but you would expect such similar moves by countries around the world. This I am very proof positive of, because you remember recently Nigeria wanted to adopt the e-Naira. They launched the e-Naira. Now, the e-Naira could not have been built without the blockchain infrastructure. In fact, for the e-Naira to work, it has to be supported by blockchain, because you cannot build that on Web 2. It has to be built on Web 3 for it to be able to be utilized as a currency. I'll give you an example. If you have a PDF in your device, maybe your laptop, your phone, and you need to send me a copy, when you send me a copy of that PDF, I have a copy of it, and you still retain a copy of that PDF. Now, you can't do that with money. So if I have 100,000 Naira in my account, if I send it to you, I shouldn't still retain the 100,000 Naira. You see, so that is where blockchain comes in. This is the major problem that blockchain solved. The issue of double spending. So the e-Naira that was being built was built on blockchain. Now, we are going to see a lot of that moves, because we could see what it has done in El Salvador.
Yeah, we definitely
they have been using it for a lot of economic building. Yeah,
we definitely look forward to that. There's a lot to unpack here, Mr. Obi Naiwuno, founder of the Crypto Bootcamp, and thank you so much for explaining that with us. It was an interesting discussion. Thank you for joining us on Network Africa.
Thank you for having me.
And that's the program today. Thank you so much for watching. I'm Tenyola Shobowale. Have a lovely weekend.